So thanks so much for joining us today. As you can see, the specific webinar is for TVETs and Learning Management Systems, Mastering the LMS for TVET Digital Learning Success. And we're very excited that our own Miles Tees will be hosting this for us. He's our Director of Digital Learning Services at IFL Corp. And he will be running through a few topics today, specifically discussing the learning management system within this, the TVET context. So looking at the communities you serve as in TVETs and the nature of your challenges, and then going through the student realities, you know, in terms of technology, how they use technology and how they experience technology. And then covering topics like how can TVETs meet the needs of digital learning, practical considerations, the importance of digital teaching strategy, TVET lecturer skills base and preparation for online learning. How does the LMS support learning, and what skills do stakeholders need to support TVET digital teaching? And then as soon as Miles presented, we will give a chance for questions and answers at the end. You are also welcome to type your questions throughout, and we will then address them at the end, just to make sure that we don't interrupt the flow of the presentation. And then should you wish to ask questions vocally, you're welcome to unmute yourself at the end of the webinar. Of course, if you experience any technical difficulties, or you cannot hear us, or you cannot see our screen, please do show us on the side of the text box as well. We will be monitoring it. So I think, well, we just past 2. We might as well slowly start, just to make sure that we don't keep you too long. So as I introduced, Miles will be Miles Tees will be hosting our webinar, and he's our Director of Digital Learning Services, and I'll be handing over to him now, just to share his screen, and then we'll start the presentation shortly.
Thanks, Jodine. I did share my screen, so I'm assuming you can see it. Just confirm for me.
Yes, I can see yours. No problem.
Okay, great. Okay, so I know we're still waiting for people. Should I speak slower until we start?
Yeah, I think let's give it 2 more minutes if everyone's okay with that. We can give it 2 more minutes before we start the actual presentation. Okay. It's about 2:04 now, so we can start at about 2:05 if that's okay.
No problem. All right. Well, we don't want to disadvantage the folks that were courteous enough to arrive early as well. So I'll just go through the topics as you've mentioned them again quickly, just to give a quick overview of what we're going to discuss today, and then we'll continue after that.
Thanks, Miles.
Okay, yeah, so Jodine give you a few of the highlights of what we're going to go through today. I think starting with setting the scene. I think we've all learned quite a lot in the last few months, so it'll be important to kind of recognize what we've all experienced and what we've all been through, because undoubtedly this is going to be affecting us from here on out. So I think it's important that we recognize those points. Then, you know, we're going to kind of go through the TVET context, and, you know, for those of you who come from TVETs, I mean, this is all old hat to you, and you know this, but it's important that I think we kind of establish some of the sort of the basics around, you know, the TVET experience and who we are dealing with. So we'll discuss that in the TVET context section. We'll look at the differences between traditional teaching and digital teaching. Again, some of these concepts will probably be familiar to most of you, but I think, again, it sets the tone nicely for what's coming later on. We dive a little bit into models, which will help us understand the kind of the artifacts that we're going to present as well later on. LMS, and why do we use it? I think sometimes we still ask that question. I mean, is it still relevant? Has it been useful? Will it continue to be so? Does it need to change? So we ask questions like that. And then we're going to go into the actual LMS itself. And then this is a bit of a deeper dive. And again, making it relevant for TVETs to understand, you know, even for those that have an LMS, has it been used effectively? And how can it be used if we're still in the process of making a decision to use an LMS? I think it's relatively important as well. Then we also have a quick tour on data and why that's so important, and how that is going to, or how it already augments decisions that we make around teaching and learning. but it's going to become increasingly popular for making decisions for teaching and learning. And also the ability for us to use data to make informed decisions for that teaching and learning is becoming ever more readily available and easier to do. So it's something that we have to quickly look at. And then we're just going to have a quick reminder around, the practical applications of individual teachers and lecturers at the level of a TVET. What does all of this that we're going to talk about today mean to them, and how can they apply what we're talking about today to their specific context? Because obviously we need to personalize all of this, and it's no point talking about lofty ideals if we can't actually implement any of these. So that's what we're going to cover today. Jolene, I'm going to go when you say go, so you let me know when we're all good.
Miles, I think it's fine to go ahead. We're at 2:07, so I think let's just start so that, yeah, we don't have too much of a late start. We do, as you said, we do have quite a few participants logged in already.
Great, okay. So as I mentioned there, I think it's important that we kind of need to recognize that we've all been through quite an experience over the last few months. It's been tumultuous across every single industry around the globe. So no one has been untouched by what coronavirus has done, from economies on a large scale all the way down to individual stories. People have felt the effect. So, for all of us involved in education, there's been significant impact. And as mentioned in the intro there, it's going to continue to affect certainly the way that we deliver and operate within the TVET sector, but also the way that we think about how to present teaching courses, learnings, programs, modules, whatever they might be. In the back of our mind, we're always going to be thinking, what if this had to happen again, and how can we prepare for it? So I think the first thing to recognize is that, because of COVID-19, there are very few experts that were prepared for something like this. Even those who, are digital teaching experts like, IFACorp, and a lot of academics around the world who study just this specific aspect of education, were caught very unawares. I think we've learned so much in the last 2 months around what's really possible, how to transition pretty much every single learner around the world to some form of digitally enabled teaching. And it's happening at every single level. I think there's very few places where it's not being experienced this way. So it's left very few people as absolute experts. Everybody's scrambling for solutions, for some mostly very practical solutions to everyday problems around how do I access my teaching and learning? How do I continue enabling learning for my students? How do I continue to support them? So, and numerous ones there. We could have a whole webinar just on the issues that have arisen from coronavirus. So it's important to recognize that everybody is amiss. So if you're feeling a bit at sea, you're in very good company, because everybody's feeling that way. I think we've also learned that, jumping straight into digital teaching and learning, it's not as easy as we hoped it would be. It's always been kind of presented as an alternative to sort of traditional face-to-face teaching, and it's sort of supported and augmented that teaching that's happened in that space. But when we have to do it en masse, and where there's particularly skills deficits amongst the people who are firstly required to do the teaching and learning, or maybe some of us thought, well, I was pretty adept at technology and ICT. I think I can do this e-learning thing relatively easy. There's been a whole bunch of other challenges, social issues, connectivity issues, device-related issues that have complicated the entire thing. So this whole move has had to require quite a significant mind shift from many people. A lot of us doing very different things that we were used to doing, obviously all in line with digital teaching and learning specifically, and that shift if you were a traditional teacher. But it hasn't been easy, and it's going to inform a lot of what we do in the future as well. And we can't, I think it's also important to recognize that for many people, what has been going on isn't really e-learning, if we're really honest with ourselves. Let's call it, maybe we can call it coping. At best, we can call it, traditional teaching with style maybe, but certainly in a lot of experiences that I've had and the lot of consulting that we've done recently is we really just try to help educators do the best they can with the tools they have in the best way possible. But in many cases, the teaching that's been happening is really just being teaching enabled through technology, as opposed to, sound instructional design, aligned with set of outcomes and tools to produce a high quality digital course. If anybody on the call today has children, I mean, I think you kind of recognize this, and some schools are doing what they can with technology, but really what they're doing is they're putting artifacts in the digital space, but children are mostly really kind of just learning on their own at their desk with often with things printed out. So we really have to look at it closely and say, is this really e-learning? Well, maybe not so much yet. I think we also have to recognize that there's been a lot of inequalities that a lot of these were existing already, but these have been put into stark contrast because of the differences that COVID has thrown up. So we have to recognize that we can't treat all learners exactly the same way, that learning doesn't all happen in the same way as we expect it will, and the different styles and the ways that certain subjects are taught also need to be considered. And while technology can be very good at democratizing access to education, at the same time, it doesn't lift everybody up at the same rate, or the tide doesn't raise all boats at the same rate. I think that's how the saying goes, similar to that. So there's careful consideration needs to be made for all of these things, so that we don't leave anybody behind, and every single discipline is given its fair due and value. We've also seen that educators probably need to adjust their expectations of what's possible. So again, I mean, this closely tied to some of the other points previously. It's very difficult to pivot into a fully online teaching and learning approach as quickly as was required. And I think the expectation from educators that this would potentially be something that they could do easily, we've seen that really isn't the case. Particularly when you're doing it at such a scale and pace as what's being required as well. So I think that we've also been given a lot of time to run and reflect on our sort of our own skill levels. Internally, institutions have had to do that as well, and it's obviously thrown up a lot of obstacles that we didn't really believe were there before. We didn't really have to grapple with because we weren't moving online at such a fast pace and such a fast scale. So those expectations have had to change. We've seen that developing skills for teaching in the online space is not something that happens overnight. Typically in the work that we do in IFL, we see the development of educators who are teaching in the TVET space. It can take a long time to build up the right sort of approach, to adapt the teaching that they need to provide in a specific way, to experiment and trial different approaches, see what really works for their students as well. And again, the COVID hasn't given us the opportunity to relax and try and experiment with these things, because we've really had to try and meet the need as quickly as possible. And so I'm hoping that as a result of, if there's any positives that come out of this, is that the need for skills for teaching using technology, whatever format that might be, now becomes a bit more of a priority than it was before for all those in the higher education space. One positive we have seen though is that I mean, technology does give us the ability to collaborate certainly on levels, unprecedented levels, I should say. That's been really good as well. And I think it's also shown that for any of those that have been involved in digital teaching in some form, or been supported through technology to do that, where collaboration has happened is extremely, extremely useful. So I think we've all known for a very long time that collaboration is key. For critical learning, it's certainly a very helpful component to doing that. And the tools that we have at our disposal today to augment the teaching that we do is really useful. It certainly helps us be more productive. And when those types of aspects are integrated into the way that we teach using technology, we can actually produce even really valuable outcomes for those that are teaching being taught to. And then I think the last thing we have to recognize is that we do need discipline-specific practices as well. And this is a common issue. Again, speaking to a lot of lecturers and teachers during this time is, trying to find content, tools, and specific maybe teaching approaches that are really unique to what they do. We have to do that as well. And again, a benefit of hopefully a benefit of what we've just been through is that people will really examine, the way that I teach a specific concept. How would I normally do this, and how am I going to do this now? And who can provide the tools to do that? So I think we will see in the months and years to come the proliferation of discipline-specific practices potentially, but also discipline-specific tools, technology-wise, that is going to really assist lecturers in this space to teach their specific discipline, because again, they have to teach it with technology now, or at least be prepared to do so. I think at this point, it's also important to realize we have to recognize that context is incredibly important. I think it's something that often goes understated. Certainly it was going unstated before the COVID issue. But now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing that there are big differences. That equality aspect that I mentioned, inequality aspect I mentioned, is that we can't treat all learners exactly the same way. And just like we can't treat all solutions in the same way. So, we often recognize that a lot of the thinking around digital education, certainly a lot of the tools and the platforms are developed in places like the US or in Europe, and specific practices and the support for academics who research the use of technology for digital teaching is sourced from places like, the colloquial global north. But if we're honest, we actually need to find solutions that are right for our own environments. And again, the experiences that we've now had through the COVID experience is going to help inform exactly what it is we need to do that. So, we've always recognized that there are inequalities within our societies and amongst institutions, and potentially even amongst certain TVETs, there are certain inequalities. But developing an approach to digital teaching and learning that is really sensitive to the needs of the learners that we have is incredibly important, because it's going to help us meet that need even more. So it's not to say we don't want to dismiss any of the learnings and the research and obviously the tools that we make prolific use of for digital teaching and learning, but it's important that we take that on board and really make it our own, so that it meets the need of the learners within the institutions that we teach at. If we kind of jump over to the students and quickly unpacking, who the typical TVET student is, and I'm sure I don't need to remind many of you on the call who they are, but just to reiterate, the typical TVET student is, they are using technology and they're experiencing the world in a far more different way than probably most of the people who do the teaching on many of the courses that they do. They're connecting with each other in different ways. They're interacting online in different ways. They see things obviously very differently to the way that older generations do as well. So, and most of this is happening through those mobile devices. They live in very culturally diverse environments as well. Could be speaking multiple languages in one classroom. They're interacting with many different people across, the African continent, within their own communities of different faiths, creeds, all that kind of thing. So it's a very culturally diverse environment and very culturally diverse population that the TVET student comes from too. I think the TVET students are also more globally aware. There's obviously, bigger challenges that they have to face now, certainly more so than in previous generations, which can apply additional pressure, if you're a student and there's so many issues to deal with and stress to deal with. This is your lived reality. Financing and access to resources is let's be honest, it's a daily challenge for many TVET students, and we can't dismiss that out of hand. Just getting access to a device, or how to get taxi fare to get to campus, those are the types of things they have to deal with on a very regular basis. access to data and connectivity, something that, potentially gets taken for granted by, other parts of society, is something that TVETs have to struggle with very often as well. And I might say sometimes the institutions themselves struggle to be able to provide that too. So it's felt by many, many people. And obviously it's critical to the way that we react, or have been able to react to issues that have been thrown up by COVID as well. So there's a myriad of other challenges that we can't even begin to touch on as part of this, but just things like just getting to campus every day, making sure that you're fed, taking care of siblings and those types of things. And so the students that we're dealing with we're dealing with these challenges on a daily basis, and ultimately what they're all trying to do is they're trying to graduate in order to get a job. And the reality is that we're now going to face even more challenges in that respect, with newly skilled graduates from TVETs, but in a job market that is potentially going to be even harder to crack. So enabling them with the right type of skills, certainly from the means in which they improve their ability to learn new skills, is going to be pretty important, so that they can secure those smaller numbers of jobs, certainly that might be available over the next year or 2 or 3, depending on how long it's going to take us to recover from this COVID issue. So by engaging TVET students in the medium of technology for learning, is actually a byproduct. That is, you're actually enabling them with a skill they're going to be needing as they probably throughout the rest of their working career, because again, it wasn't not even 4 months ago that one of the biggest challenges that we were kind of grappling with was the fourth industrial revolution, and how potentially automation was going to shake up the work environment. Those types of challenges certainly aren't going away, and technology is going to be the medium through which people skill themselves. And I'm sure many of you here, like me, have been getting an endless number of emails about upskilling and taking free courses, because that's the type of thing. The jobs market is going to become that more competitive, and the technology and the medium of training yourself and acquiring new skills is technology. So for TVETs to start using technology is obviously a natural choice. So our next part is we're going to kind of very quickly jump to we just kind of establish exactly what it is that TVETs do on a daily basis, just to kind of set the ground. So I mean, we typical types of activities that would happen in a TVET are things like attendance registers. This is something that's maybe paper-based, or it may be semi-automated if an institution has something like an SIS, but I mean, that's not always the case. Learners are typically using in-class learning aids. There's a printouts or handouts prepared by lecturers. Obviously, these are digital. There's a lot of work that goes into doing those. There's written, formative, and summative assessments, and these can take various formats as well. Obviously, a lot of TVETs are involved in a lot of practical skills acquisition as well, and so that they actually need to demonstrate competency in certain areas in other ways, and something like portfolio development is important there. Most TVET teaching is relatively structured, follows a set timetable, class timetable, and you need to be at this place at this time in order to be able to do that. Visual aids and instructional materials beyond that, which we just print, which to augment the sort of teaching and learning process. And then, again, textbooks is on top of that. And again, that whole experience of where to find funding in order to be able to do that. We all know how difficult that whole NSF process is, and access to textbooks continues to plague students. So that's all part of that traditional TVET face-to-face learning process. Now, if we compare a lot of these traditional processes to digital learning models, you'll see from what we present here that obviously it augments it in a specific way, but it also provides an alternative as well. So we're certainly not saying that digital in any way is better. I mean, some environments, especially in those where TVET students aren't enabled for ICT usage, there are very good reasons why the traditional model continues to be used. I think this is presented more kind of as a set of alternatives to the way that digital learning can either be offered as an alternative or enhanced where that is actually possible. So in the traditional model, one size fits all, and that's the traditional classroom as we all know it. The lecturer standing at the front of the classroom and providing a lesson. The digital enables us to jump more into individual learning experiences. So, learning styles is no longer kind of a popular way to approach things. I mean, some would even go so far as to say they've been completely debunked. But it does enable certainly learners to grapple with their learning contents and learning outcomes in a way that is suitable for them, whatever that might be. There has been a sort of shift in thinking around that. Advancement within the traditional model is mostly based on traditional assessments, so that's your tests and your quizzes. Whereas with digital learning, we can start experimenting with ways of enabling access based on your mastery of certain areas. We can start, starting using things like tasks, for instance, and aligning things that way. We can also enable access based on actual performance as well, and very real-time performance as well. So we get a sort of much better overview of the learning that's taking place on a digital course, for instance, using things like analytics, for instance, which we'll come to later. We'll be able to give us the ability to release content and also tell us about those who are struggling as well very quickly, as opposed to the retrospective approach in the traditional model, where we can only really react to things after a test. We can potentially get greater insight into the performance of students a lot quicker if we're using a digital learning approach. Fixed schedules and timetables is obviously one that's well known. Again, the advantage of the digital space is that the learning can happen anywhere and any time. With content being available in the digital space, it's accessible whenever the student has time to do it, wherever they might be, and allows a lot of flexibility in that approach as well. I mean, an interesting side thing that I've heard recently is that, and I'm sure many others here as well have heard that a lot of lecturers are taking advantage of the free data that's available on certain mobile plans after 7 o'clock. And so a lot of lecturers are actually taking advantage of that too, and are providing live online lectures after 7 p.m. at night. So, kind of turning that traditional model on its head, where your students would be busy during the day and studying at night. Now they're potentially doing that the other way around. So again, that wouldn't be possible without a digital platform in place and a way to integrate that. So obviously it's an advantage over the traditional fixed class and timetables. Also with traditional, I mean, it's very teacher focused. So, again, the lecturer has a lot of that knowledge and disseminating it to the class. Where with digital, it enables us to, through things like collaboration and group work, it enables people and students to connect with each other and to, start constructing the learning and the understanding of specific outcomes or focus areas within their own groups, and giving students to really grapple with content on their own terms to a degree. So I don't think that teachers will ever be out of the equation. In fact, they're more necessary than ever. But it certainly allows students to grapple with those concepts in a more constructive way potentially. And when it's built on the foundation of sort of connected approach to learning or constructive approach, that can be even more conducive, because then the students feel like they have some decision-making capability about when learning happens and on what terms it takes place as well. We see a lot of traditional sort of learning aids. I think we kind of covered this one, and learning resources in the traditional approach. Digital learning models obviously allow us to be quite diverse in the learning content. So everything from videos, animations. It really takes demonstration of certain concepts to another level. It also allows us to curate that content a lot easier as well. So, there's usually a lot of work involved in building a course online, but largely, once that's done, making edits to that is much easier. So as new concepts are introduced to curriculums, as new resources are made available, or educators find them, we can quickly integrate that into digital learning courses that much easier, which is obviously a bigger advantage over sort of traditional study guides, for instance. And then again, I think we kind of went over this a little bit already, but standardized formative and summative assessments. We're not quite at this stage yet where institutions are doing summative assessment. There are some universities who are starting to experiment with that, particularly now towards the end of these semesters, where critical assessment has to take place. But there's a lot more flexibility around, what digital can do for your institution when it comes to assessment. And we mentioned some of them there, quizzes, tests, assignments, and in various platforms have a number of alternatives to how that can be done. And it gives you the ability to try and experiment with other ways of doing assessment as well. Because the capabilities with technology, and certainly connecting through the internet, has now made that much easier. So that's just a quick overview of the comparisons between traditional model and digital learning models. But before we dive into digital, I think it's important that certainly this informs a lot of thinking we have at Alpha Corp and the type of projects that we get involved in. Is that while we can base things a lot on our experiences, I spoke about lived experiences there, but also the way that we have done things before, it's also important to recognize that a lot of work has been done by many people over the years when it comes to the use of technology for teaching. And so this is really where models like the community of Quarry can really be critically important, particularly at the planning stage for any educator as they kind of start thinking about using technology for teaching, potentially even also as a means to review what they've been doing. So many of you might be familiar with the community inquiry model. It's certainly informed the way that we've set up our artifact to understand the use of the LMS a little bit better. But to explain these areas sort of very briefly is, when we talk about social presence, this really is talking about, how you create a persona for yourself as the educator in the digital teaching space, so that, you're accessible, that you encourage collaboration with other people, that, people can see you as an online personality. On the cognitive side, we're talking about things like exchanging information, connecting ideas, how you kind of draw connections between what it is you're trying to teach to people so they can start developing these concepts for themselves. And then the very sort of more practical teaching presence, so that you're active in the teaching space, that that there's actual intent in what you're doing. All of these coalesce, and as you can see there, they kind of overlap with each other to support a digital teaching approach that hopefully enables an environment where really valuable teaching is happening. So there's obviously a lot of things going on here. I mean, this is obviously a simplistic model, but the good thing about it is the longer these types of models have been around, the more they've been refined. And till to today, we have things like the online engagement framework, which is also a very good one. Which kind of gives us some indication of the important aspects that we need to see as a, say for instance, digital course gets built. What are the types of activities that you need to do passively? What are the active things we need to do? And what are these different areas that we need to engage within students so that we create a conducive learning community online? Because, the digital course is really only a small part of that learning process for them, where we're going to use technology. If they're engaged on all these specific levels, and to varying degrees, it's more likely that they're going to stay engaged with their course. They're going to feel something for the community in which they are, engaging themselves hopefully on a regular basis, and it gives them a sense of self-direction, so that they actually complete the courses, within the time frames, and to the levels that are expected as well. Another very good model that's worth referring to is the SAMA model. And the reason I like it is because it really it gives an indication of the progression of capability, of how both an individual and how a course can progress in the use of technology. So it starts off with the S in the SAMA, and that's substitution. And to explain that, so in the beginning of your sort of road to adopting technology for the way that you teach or the way that teaching might happen inside a TVET, there's mostly a lot of substitution is going on. If you think about now the situation you've been going through with COVID, this has actually been happening quite a lot. So, I spoke about that earlier example where, teachers at schools are using technology to kind of augment their teaching. All that they're really doing is they're substituting what they would normally do with maybe they're delivering it in a different way, but essentially they're doing the same thing. So there's no real change in what they're actually trying to teach or the way that they're teaching it. It's just potentially delivered in another way. We then move on to the next level, which is augmentation. So there's the chance that some educators, again within COVID, are starting to get to this point. They're actually substituting what they would normally do in a class situation with a quiz, for instance. So instead of giving an actual test on paper, now it's been done on quiz. There's some functional improvement with it. They're starting to maybe potentially adapt it a little bit, but at this stage, not really much. It's essentially the same thing. It's just delivered through a different medium. And I mean, most of what they're doing at this stage is really just enhancing the things that they were doing before. I mean, curriculum potentially is not going to change in any way or form. Outcomes certainly won't be changed much. It's really we're doing the same thing. We might just be doing it better with technology. The next level, and again, these, jumping between these stages, it's not always a sort of a linear progression of time. It's 2 to 3 weeks between each one. It takes lecturers some time to kind of think about what it is that they're doing with the outcomes that they need to teach and what they're trying to achieve. So at this stage, they are starting to modify particularly outcomes. They're really integrating with the technology to see how better to do that. And at the final level, redefinition, the technology allows for the creation of new tasks. So, maybe the teaching of a specific outcome in a way that you hadn't really conceived of before. And this is, potentially using things like group work or involving people in a journal or something like that. Those are just two very small examples. But really what's happening is we're actually transforming the way that we're teaching students through the use of that technology now, because we have so many more options available to us because of the way that the different communication is working. We're collaborating on certain different levels, and the expectations from students can be different as well because of the way that they interact with the technology. And I think what we're really trying to say with this is that when a few of these components sort of coalesce or interact with each other, that's really where we're going to see some really valuable teaching happening within TVETs with respect to technology. So, the first one is that contextualized and responsive digital teaching strategy. So when we think about who our students are, what is the reality on the ground, how do we actually want to approach digital teaching for our students, and what does it look like? What does it really look like for our institutions where we are? We integrate with the tool set, so the tools within the LMS, which are the ones that are going to be most effective, that the students that I have and the reality that they have can actually use effectively. We pair that with lecturer digital teaching competencies. So we need lecturers to be able to use the tools. That's practically what it means. And how can they actually apply what they know with the learning management system in place? Obviously, data connectivity and access is critical to that. No Wi-Fi, nothing's going to happen. And so those kind of need to be established. It needs to be reliable and with little latency as possible. Fortunately, that's becoming less and less of an issue, but we still have a long way to go. There are still some TVETs who don't have nearly enough access. And then lastly, we also need adequate student ICT competency. So, and again, I think this is a experience that many teaching at TVETs will nod their heads at. We need students that at practical level, know how to use a PC. They know how to access the internet. They're competent in their use of productivity tools. They know how to submit an assignment, fill out an assignment in Word and submit it. And so, I mean, that's beyond the ambit of a single lecturer to do. And typically a lot of TVET lecturers I've spoken to, they're still dealing with challenges like that before they can even get to the point where really valuable teaching is happening. And so once these all coalesce together or interact with each other, that's kind of where TVETs are then going to be able to make the best usage of an LMS to achieve the teaching and learning outcomes that they want to aim for. So if we start looking through the LMS, there really are sort of 4 main areas that we've decided to focus on, and will make kind of sense to you now as we move on to that area. And typically this is focused on a lot of the types of things that an institution will need to achieve through the technology they have, the LMS being the main environment for doing that, and where most of the tools that is there is going to enable them to do. So assessment is obviously a critical component for teaching. It enables us to see exactly how our students are performing. Are they at the level where they need to be in order to show that they are competent at those outcomes in order to progress. We need to demonstrate a lot of content. We need to make content available. The learning is reliant on the content to be of a high quality. It needs to be accessible. We need to be able to track its usage, and we also want to know if it's been used in the right way as well. Then the LMS also enables collaboration, and this is maybe one area that isn't as highly used within learning technology as it can be, because again we could have a whole webinar on just on the collaboration aspects of technology and why it's important for digital learning. But the tools within the LMS to enable collaboration on projects and to enable learning to happen is critically important. And so an LMS is really critical from that perspective. And then information, but also we could also call this administration as well. So the types of information that students need, from a peripheral perspective, in order for them to be successful at the learning that they do. So it's things like timetables, regular communications around changes to timetables, contact lists, things like that. And we'll go through those in more detail. But all of those things they're not obviously part of the learning itself, but they are just as critical to be known by the people who are learning at the TVET in order for them to be successful. So, across the entire LMS platform, all of these things are enabled, and understanding exactly what they can be applied for is really important. And we're going to kind of jump into that now. And obviously there's lots of others as well. So when we look at this diagram, which is one that we've recently produced, the idea behind this is to, and I recognize that it's probably confusing for many of you looking at it for the first time. We will go through it in detail, so don't be too stressed if it doesn't make much sense now. We're trying to provide a guideline to exactly, to TVET lecturers or anybody for that matter who's using an LMS, the right way to apply a specific tool for those 4 areas that we just went over now. And we'll go through those in detail, because again, when all of these are taken at sort of this high-end view, you kind of wonder, well, how could I possibly apply every single one of these tools to create a sort of a conducive learning environment or learning process for the students who I need to teach, when it's as complicated as this. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down, and then it should make a little bit more sense. Again, I think it's important so I just want to reiterate that, when we built the model, it really is designed around a community inquiry model as one example. It isn't the only one that we did. And again, it's to try and encourage interaction with the technology through the lecture for quality learning by students, informed by many of these areas. So, creating that critical social presence, supporting discourse where that overlaps, and for all those specific areas, so that it can centralize on that educational experience. And you can see, you'll see in the diagram, it's all aligned to these specific focus areas, because it's been proven that that's what actually leads towards a comprehensive educational experience, is what is highlighted there. So starting with administration and course management. So as I said there, the administrative aspects of what students need to know in order to be successful, we see a number of different areas. You'll notice that we have created this movement towards the outside, and you'll see there we have supplemental, blended, fully online. The idea here is that as you become more competent, or as an educator becomes more competent in the use of the LMS, and you move to teaching and learning with technology more intrinsically, you're going to start potentially using these tools to support learning that is potentially blended or fully online as well. And so tools like notifications, course contacts, and announcements, these are relatively basic tools to be used, but they are critically important for sort of administrative components of teaching. But critically, they speak to kind of that teaching presence that you need as an educator, to show students that you are present, that there are things going on, that you are active in the course, and that there's a lot there for them to see. And so those can be critically applied to provide all that impetus. Also, then, as you become more adept and we move into sort of areas that are more blended potentially, we can align things like outcomes to the tasks that we have. So students know that they need to achieve all the way out to the edges there. We look at things like groups, which become critically more important when we sort of move beyond the supplemental level, which is, we're only really providing some level of technology integration. As it becomes more blended and we put more reliance on the LMS, it's critical that groups and the development of the community to support teachers, support learning in students gets applied more. Discussion forums become more important as well. And you can see there it's colored together with the socialization sort of collaboration, because that's exactly what it's encouraging. So the use of those tools will steadily encourage the use, encourage the application of teaching, it will encourage the application of collaboration amongst your students, so that they become more integrated into that online community. At the levels of of blended learning, and it's not to say that these tools aren't only applicable in blended learning. I've seen them successfully applied for supplemental learning as well. The journal tool, for instance, as one example, is a good way to introduce things like reflective learning, because students have to really write about what it is that they're going through, what about their learning, and there's some very innovative ways of doing it. And so you see that it's linked to the thinking components, and really supporting kind of the cognitive and the overlap with the cognitive and the teaching area, so that they can really benefit out of that. I'm rushing here a bit because I'm sensitive to time. I know there are some people who have some questions. Then quickly onto the assessment area. So moving again online to the edges there as well. At the very sort of basic level, we use the quiz, and again, quizzes obviously to check what kind of retention has taken place, but it allows us to kind of dynamically test how well that knowledge has been retained, and there's various alternatives for doing that within the LMS space. At a not really higher level, but potentially a little bit more advanced than a quiz, is the assessment, which requiring a few more advanced cognitive skills in order to be able to complete an assignment, and that can be at the group phase as well. And then also very important and very closely tied to assignments is rubrics, which is related to feedback, which we all know is very, very important for students to see as well. So again, using the legend there, you can see this is tied into the thinking components. So we know exactly which focus area that specific tool within the LMS is trying to encourage. And then lastly, from the content side, basic components like the folder enables us to view content and make it accessible in dynamic ways to students, all the way to the other end of the scale, which is fully online. So again, multimedia becomes critically more important the more content that you put online. I think we've all seen lots of good examples of that, certainly in the last 4 months. And dynamically changing content out as maybe the focus of a discipline changes, or as a specific set of outcomes changes, allows us to update and be really innovative the way they do that. And again, the LMS allows us a lot of capability to host and present all that. So all of these components, come together to provide a comprehensive digital teaching and learning experience, all linking to those specific components there, the thinking part, the teaching part, and socialization/collaboration. And the use of all of these tools all together combines to create that online learning community. So as we start from the middle sections and then move towards the outer edges, and we start, investigating more blended learning, and what is starting to look like fully online learning, your online learning community will naturally start to build itself. Particularly, if you're a lecturer and you're present in your classes, that's certainly going to happen with a lot of activity happening online. And the end goal is that you create a mature online learning community that is self-sustaining and is making use of all of these specific tools to support their own learning. That's really kind of, as I mentioned there, the sweet spot that we're actually trying to achieve. I think the last word here before we're going to get to the end is that I mentioned analytics briefly at the beginning there, is that data-driven decision-making is going to become even more important. It gives us very clear set of performative analytics data that allows us to make decisions for our students based on the interactions with all of these tools. And so the great thing about most LMSs these days is they have an underlying analytics engine which enables us to start drawing data about what our students are doing, how they're interacting with the content, how they are collaborating. Obviously, generic things like performance on quizzes and tests, but also the amount of use of all of these specific tools, and what can that tell us about their current performance now and potential future performance as well. And so it's only with sort of widespread usage, which is why all of these components are surrounded by the sort of analytics bubble there, when the data becomes that much more richer because the interaction is that much higher. And so, very much a chicken and egg there, but we do need a lot of interaction from students in order to generate all this performative data, which then becomes, later on predictive data. And so obviously the use of the LMS is critical in order for us to be able to determine that as well. So all these things coalesce to combine to create a really conducive learning environment in which there's a strong online digital learning community, which will help students obviously in the long run. So it's really, really important. So I think just to finish off quickly before we run out of time, I wanted to add this section because again, I like to think things about it needs to be really practical. So for me, if I'm an individual lecturer at a TVET, I've seen some impressive concepts here, but what does this actually practically mean for me? So if we're thinking about day one, I've now started on this digital teaching and learning journey. I'm going to take it up. What are the practical steps for me, and how do I actually apply that? So firstly, step one is establish your context. I think we've kind of discussed that a few times now, but it's important to know who your students are, the types of challenges they have, and how they're likely to interact with the digital tools and the experience that you type of envisioning. I think step two is to align your outcomes to the chosen tool set. So we discussed quite a few there within the diagram. That's certainly not an exhaustive set of tools from any LMS. A lot of them do a lot more than that. But at a basic level, how can you achieve your teaching and learning aims with the tools that are in the LMS? And not even at a superficial level to begin with, as we saw in the SAMR model there. Eventually it will mature more, but I think in the beginning you really just kind of substitute what you're doing now in the face-to-face class with what you could potentially do in the virtual class. It's at the third stage, it's very important to know your skills, your tools as well. So, we talk about RCT competency for students. It's just as important that the lecturers know what it is that if they've chosen a specific tool set to teach with, they need to know how they work. They need to be confident in their usage and how they get set up and how they apply them to facilitate their teaching. So they need to skill that. It's also critically important that they build their course as well. So if you've obviously aligned all your outcomes to specific activities using the LMS, it's now time to actually build your course in line with that. Obviously, there's lots of time to be able to change that before you release your course to students, but make sure that you have enough content and you've built in enough opportunity to create presence for yourself as a lecturer so that there's lots of interaction happening. And then step 5 is, get busy with teaching to facilitate using the tools as you've envisioned them. Again, being, significantly or being adequately equipped through the skilling up that you've done to be able to adapt to changes and then to dynamically manage and teach your course as you need to. And so, with things like COVID, for instance, come along, you're not suddenly surprised by, how things need to change because you have the skills and your course structure and the way that you built it in the LMS is able to adapt to that process as well. A very important step as well is to, once you've done a module or once you've done your course or, once the significant teaching component is over, you can decide how often this happens, to reflect on how well the use of those specific tools actually worked. Did you achieve the outcomes that you wanted to? Did your students interact with you in the way that you expected them to? And did you actually achieve what you actually wanted to achieve using the LMS tools? And is it possible that you could do this in another way? The good thing about an LMS is that they are very flexible and there are many, many ways of doing different things. So that is critically important. So even at on your own level, you can involve peers in doing that. It's always a good thing as well. But at an individual level, determining if what you did was right. Was it right for you? Was it right for your context? Was it right for your students? And is it something you can repeat? And then essentially you will be doing the same thing again for when you teach again in future. As new innovations come on board, it gives the opportunity to reevaluate every one of these components so that you can become a digital teacher that becomes more adept at being able to cope with specific challenges as there might be, but obviously to become a digital teacher as it is. So that's kind of it. Sorry, I ran a little bit over time, Jolene. I hope it's okay. I haven't been able to see if there's been any questions. So
thanks, Miles.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Miles, for your time and for your insightful presentation. I think we don't have any questions in the chat box, but we still have time to open the floor for those who want to maybe ask a question or two. We would, even if it's just sharing some of your experiences over the past few months, especially with COVID-19 and how you've been coping, with your digital teaching and learning, how have you experienced it as a TVET? Yeah, that's one of the questions that we would love to just hear feedback on. I don't know if anyone would like to help us there. Yeah, and also just looking at how you plan to go forward after lockdown, or after your institutions are open. Is this something that you'll be going or continuing to do more digital teaching, or is it something that will just slowly, gradually just go back to the way it was and you will only be doing your conventional face-to-face teaching? We'd love to hear from you if there's any questions or inputs. You're also welcome to unmute your mic if you'd like to talk to us. feel free to also type in the chat box if you'd like to just to comment on or just yeah, add to the conversation in terms of how you've experienced the past few months. And if you've had to move to digital teaching and learning or digital teaching quite quickly, and how you've experienced it. Okay, Miles, it doesn't look like we've have any questions. I think you've done a good job explaining everything very well and in depth. I don't know if you wanted to add anything from your side, Miles.
No, again, just apologies for going over time. Thanks for listening in, folks. As I mentioned, I mean, we've gained a lot of experience through our years of interacting with so many institutions. Everything from small private colleges to very large public institutions. We've seen kind of every single example of what's possible. We've dealt with many institutions which have significant challenges, connecting and reaching their students through technology. And so in every case, we've managed to find a solution. Oftentimes it's a unique, the conversations are critical to developing that. We're quite happy to speak to any institution in order to be able to do that. We're involved in a lot of different projects, everything from obviously skills development. We're very strong in that area, enabling institutions from a strategic level to understand their use of technology. So, and again, dealing with institutions that have never taught with technology before, providing a kind of very low level set of sort of stretch goals in order for them to reach their students with technology. From an individual perspective, I mean, we have accredited skills programs as well. So, we enable lecturers to, from a very basic level, even those with years and years of teaching experience, kind of really start to understand the benefits of technology and how it applies to them on a personal level and for their teaching. I mean, those are accredited programs. And then we also get involved in, content development programs. So you recognize, and we've actually done quite a few of these projects now under the COVID pandemic, is that, getting a course from a study guide to, fully formed digital course, it can take some time. And particularly if you're learning a new bunch of skills, if you're integrating your teaching with a LMS for the first time, for instance, this is where we really can make a difference, because we have a team of instructional designers who eat, sleep, breathe, talk, and everything else digital learning. So we work with many lecturers, and in fact I think it's a point of pride there, is that we work with individual lecturers. So we, again, talking to that context, we ask them specific questions about how they teach individual outcomes. What's the normal way that you do this? And what are the tools within the LMS that you can use to apply this? And we take that, we zoom out, and we end up building really, really credible courses that end up becoming, something they can use to reach their students and actually produce really credible learning. So there's really is a lot that we do, and we'd be more than happy to help any institution that reaches out.
Okay, thanks, Miles. So if we don't have any further questions, I've also added to the chat box, we obviously will be sending our recording to those who've attended. Please feel free to respond to that email, or you could email us at our marketing email address and we'll forward it to the correct person. If you've got any questions that you'd rather ask us via email, or if you want us to get in touch via phone, please feel free to get in touch with us. And thanks so much for your time today. And thanks, Miles, again for your presentation.
Thanks all.